Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician, a relationship and intimacy coach, and I'm an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing marriage. I've shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. So if you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now, let's dive in. Many of you listeners have children. Some of you have young children, some older, some are empty nesters. And there also are a number of you who don't have children, either by choice or not by your own choice. And I just want to acknowledge that the upcoming episode, I'm really going to be talking about parenting a lot. And if you don't have children, I still think that what I'm going to say is going to be really valuable for you. I'm going to start by telling a story about my daughter. She's 27 now and getting her PhD. And this happened when she was, I don't remember if she was a sophomore or a junior in high school. But she was hanging out with a number of her friends in the San Francisco Bay Area where we live. And she was hanging out with, 5 or 6 friends. And in the context of telling a story, she referred to something or another. And she went into the room, but my parents were making out. And so I just needed to wait or go back later. I can't ask them right now. Something along those lines. And it was just completely incidental, like saying, I had to find my key and then I'll open the door, or something like, okay, let me get a pen and then I can write it down. And so she was saying, she couldn't really take action because her parents were kissing, and when they were done, then she'd be able to take care of whatever it was. Well, every single one of the girls she was with, instead of focusing on the point she was making, they all turned to her and said, wait, you see your parents kissing? Your parents kiss? And they ended up having this kind of remarkable, comprehensive conversation because 100% of the other girls, some with parents in, quote, happy marriages, some with parents in toleration relationships where there's a lot of compromise and holding themselves back to just maintain the peace. I don't really know the particulars if any of them has higher kind of angry conflict in the relationships, but whatever it was, many of them certainly looked like from the outside they were good, solid marriages. And none of the other girls had ever seen their parents kiss. I think one had seen it. There was some Christmas party with the mistletoe, and maybe one remembered a few years back when they took family photos, and so there was one that was posed that way. But the point is that they could identify the either very small number of times that they specifically remembered their parents kissing, or they had never actually seen that happen. And my daughter, she was just astonished because part of her normal life is seeing her parents be affectionate with one another. Now, let me be very clear. Clothes are on. Nobody ends up saying, go get a room. We're actually, quite normal and conservative in that way in terms of not having the children be aware when we're having sex, not being too loud, not being too obvious about anything. But just, my husband comes home from work and sometimes we don't touch. Sometimes it's just a quick hug. And sometimes it's kind of a delicious, gratifying kiss when we're not focused on anything except what we're feeling with one another. And sometimes I'll be cooking and it'll spontaneously happen, or we'll be having a conversation. It's not that we reach over in the middle of dinner and start making out. Nothing like that at all. But our daily life includes not even every day. It's not actually anything until this very moment while I'm talking. It's never occurred to me to track it. But it's within the culture of our marriage, and therefore within the culture of our family, that we are expressive of our intimacy with one another in ways that are just very normal and natural, such that when my daughter was telling the story, she wasn't intrigued, she wasn't shocked, she wasn't grossed out. It was just like a normal thing. It wasn't fundamentally that different for her than mentioning that her parents were holding hands. And so, we didn't have both of our hands available to pick something up. And her surprise at finding out how unusual it was made a big impression on me, because honestly, it would never occur to me to compare or think about it one way or the other. My own parents were divorced when I was 9, and very early in my mother's marriage with my stepfather, they used to make out a lot, but of course it was super early in the marriage, and I don't remember when that tapered off, and they anyway went ahead and got divorced eventually. And my father remarried, but I wasn't really part of his life once he remarried, so I don't know what they were doing. And anyway, they were mostly alone in the house anyway. So the point is, it's not really anything that I ever thought about. I just have been natural and uncomplicated, and early in our marriage, our intimacy and erotic connection was kind of flatter. Not the very beginning, but in the early years of marriage when we had lots of babies, and before I really dove in to learn how to kindle the erotic flame and how to take control of my own experience rather than waiting for him to change in ways that would have me feel more turned on. I learned how to take responsibility, and he learned how to take responsibility. And plus, we did a lot together to really have the extraordinary marriage we have now. And along the way, that certainly included being affectionate as something normal. Okay, now that is setting the context for, I read a quote last week and I kind of imprinted it in my mind. I don't actually remember where I saw it. Chances are it was something on social media, but I'm not really sure. And it really doesn't matter because, well, I guess I would like to give credit if I remembered where I saw it. But the important thing is that it's a truth for me, and I just liked how it was said. And what I saw was the best thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother well. And I deeply believe this. It's also true that the best thing a mother can do for her children is to love their father well. Now, let me be very clear. If you're in a toxic relationship, of course, this doesn't apply. If you're divorced, that doesn't apply either. I'm really just speaking to the context where you love your children's father and you live with him, or you love your children's mother and you live with her, and you have a good, solid marriage. And in our society, so often, especially for women, we are taught that the children should come first. And at the point at which you have essentially turned away from the relationship, that is true. But when you are turning towards the relationship, it isn't true. You actually do your children a bit of a disservice if you prioritize them over your spouse consistently. Now, I'm talking about broad strokes. I'm not talking about every single minute of every day. There are times when you have a crying 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who needs a diaper change, and it's not the time to turn your attention to whatever your spouse is saying to you. Children come first in that moment. And there are examples of this, and the kids are older too. But putting aside those specific moments, overall, one of the best things that you can do for your children is to focus on and prioritize the relationship that you have with their other parent. This comes up in a lot of different ways, and there are different ways to understand how this is so important. I'm going to actually start by talking about when a couple is divorced. One of the main reasons that I provide guidance for ideally both parents, but sometimes it's only one, that I can provide guidance. Don't speak badly about your children's other parent. And obviously that's not original to me. There are a lot of different reasons, but the reason I really want to emphasize for why not to do that is because your children come from both of you. And if you essentially detest, put down, really denigrate your children's other parent, then you're leaving your children the impossible task of figuring out how they came from both of you. How do they reconcile that they have some of each of you inside them? It's like encouraging a kind of internal split personality if you are really against and speak ill of the other parent. I'm not saying you should ever lie. I'm not saying that you should pretend the other parent is someone different than who they truly are. But there's a kind of emotional quality to how some people speak about an ex, which is really a burden for a child looking to find their own identity as someone who has emerged from both of you. So if you can be peaceful and respectful and have all of your other feelings something you handle privately, you make it easier for your child to grow up with their own authentic, internally harmonious identity. Now, what I've just said is true when parents are divorced, but I've expressed that because it's sometimes easier to see it in a more extreme example. When it comes to the marriage you have with your children's other parent, and you're in it together, you're a team, it's still true that if you are disrespectful and dismissive or kind of unkind, rejecting, judgmental, unloving towards your spouse, it's not only that you're modeling that behavior for your children, you're also creating a dilemma for them, which is mostly unconscious, of course, in figuring out how they come from both of you. How are they rightly your child and your spouse's child? So what is my purpose in doing this, in addressing this topic? Well, let me also tell you that initially when I became a relationship and intimacy coach and wanted to help couples, I first considered working with children and how I might really support children to grow up empowered, responsible, kind, loving, fulfilled, purpose-driven adults. And while considering that, because I wanted to make a career change when I decided to stop practicing medicine, like this was a priority for me. But as I continued to explore the possibilities and my own passions and preferences and how I wanted to use my time and my own purpose, what I decided is that I was going to become a relationship and intimacy coach, because far and away, the very best thing that I can do for the children in this world is teach their parents how to have truly fantastic relationships. That has been a motivator that I haven't actually thought of in a while, because now I'm really driven by how gratifying and important it is to help couples, period. But I'm also driven by what it does for their children and the families and generations to come. Whatever you work on and evolve in your own relationship and then model for your children, even if your children are adult children, by the way, but certainly when they're still at home with you, that is work that they will not have to do themselves in the future because they've been provided a role model which really serves them in creating secure, loving, passionate relationships. So if you prioritize your children, that means not turning your attention towards the marriage at times when the marriage and your spouse need you to. You can tell yourself that you're doing that for the sake of the children. And I hope that one of the things you take from hearing this episode is that actually one of the best things you can do for your children is actually prioritize the relationship with their other parent. Does that mean you should be making out in your kitchen or kissing romantically when you reconnect at the end of the day and having your children see that? Not necessarily. Of course not. But if you feel like doing that, well, don't hold back, because all of this contributes to the experience of being in a loving home, because your children observe how you speak with one another. And if you only make up behind closed doors or have your best experiences in private, they don't know that's happening. So let the love come out in how you communicate. And if it also comes out in how you touch one another, well, great. And if not, also great. Like, my purpose is not to advocate public displays of affection within your own home. My purpose is to advocate being available for the energy of romance, no matter what the situation is, and not just leaving that for when the two of you, you and your spouse, are alone. I want to make sure to invite you to enroll in my upcoming Valentine's Day course. It's free, and it will give you ways to connect and stoke the passion and kind of up-level the affection and depth of connection between the two of you according to what you each desire. If you're not affectionate people, no problem. If you are, well, let that be felt in your home and let that be a part of your Valentine's Day. This course, it's pretty short, it's free, it's deep, it's potent, and it's meant to give you the tools to make Valentine's Day exactly what you both want it to be, because that in itself will feel so good. The link to sign up is in the show notes, and also you can just go straight to alexandrastockwell.com/Valentines, and be sure to share this with your friends. If your children have friends and you're friends with their parents, share this episode and certainly share the link to the Valentine's Day course. This course is for anyone who's in a committed relationship and wants to have more fun, more joy, and more pleasure celebrating Valentine's this year.